All right, great. Welcome, everybody. We are here for the Ventura County Climate Emergency Council regular meeting. And it is Tuesday, March 15, 2021, just a few minutes after noon. This is a special notice because we don't have a location, but we are meeting via Zoom and telephonically. And this is in response to the declared state and local emergencies due to the novel coronavirus and limited public access to the Hall of Administration, consistent with the governor's executive order N-29-20. This Ventura County Climate Emergency Council meeting will be conducted via Zoom and telephonically. And so regarding public comments, I think we have received a few. We'll get to it when we go through the agenda. So as we call this meeting to order, let's have the roll call, please.
Thank you. Councilmember White.
Here.
Councilmember Ferris.
Here.
Chair Schnapp.
Here.
Councilmember Kessley.
Here.
Councilmember Ramirez.
Here.
Councilmember Ontiveros.
I'm here.
Councilmember Garola.
Here.
Vice Chair Chavez.
Here.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum present.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to item number 3, Pledge of Allegiance. And Councilmember Kessley, would you do us the favor of leading us through the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of
of
America
America.
and to the
To the
republic
republic.
for which it
Which
stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
individually,
with liberty, justice.
justice for all.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to item number 4, and that's the approval of our minutes from the February 22nd, 2022 Climate Emergency Council meeting.
I'll move approval.
Okay. Seconds. Okay, so that was moved by Councilmember Baldwin and seconded by Vice Chair Chavez. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Chair Schnapp.
Yes.
Councilmember Kessley.
Yes.
Councilmember Ramirez.
Aye.
Councilmember Ontiveros.
Yes.
Councilmember Garola.
Aye.
Vice Chair Chavez.
Aye.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Let's move on then to item number 5, public comments for items not on the agenda. And so Clay, do you want to describe what we've received?
Yes, so I wanted to mention to the council members, just to make sure everyone's aware of it, there were 2 emails distributed to you today. There were a total of 16 public comments received between approximately 2 in the afternoon yesterday and 11 o'clock this morning. And so the first of those was sent to you at approximately 9:30 this morning, a batch of 15 emails. 13 of those were items that are not on the agenda. And then the other 2 are items that are associated with agenda item number 14.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Yes.
I saw that when I was looking at my email right before the meeting, and I couldn't find the comments, and I wanted to read them. So are they in a separate email? Because I only saw one comment from one person.
There are 2 emails that were sent out. The first email had 15 attachments plus the agenda. And
Oh,
then
the
this,
attachments. Okay.
right.
All
and
right.
the second email just had the single attachment that was the one additional one that
Okay.
we received shortly before 11 o'clock this morning.
Okay. So I saw the second one, but not the first one. Okay. Thank you. I'll read them in.
And all of those public comments have also been posted on the VCCEC's webpage under the agenda section for today's meeting. So those are already available to the public as well.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, so let's move on under the correspondence agenda area.
Chair, if I
yes.
may, did we want to see if there are any other additional comments not on the agenda other than those that we received already?
Yeah, oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So are there any other comments from the public on items not on the agenda? And so you could raise your hand or you could take yourself off of mute. So seeing none, then let's move on to the correspondence agenda. And we'll get to item number 6 here. So it's correspondence from the county executive office staff.
Right. So for the correspondence agenda, including the item number 6, which was shared by staff, there's no action being requested on these. All of these were items that were shared with the council at various times between the last meeting and this meeting, and they're all for your attention. Staff does not have any further comments on theirs.
And so this would be for items 6, 7, 8, and 9.
That is correct.
Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. So let's move on to our regular agenda items here. Item number 10 is the resolution authorizing the remote teleconference meetings. And we have to do this on a 30-day period. So Clay, do you have anything else here?
I do not have any updates for you at this time. Nothing has changed as far as the status and ability of this board to meet this way. So this is the same thing that you have been, same agenda item that you've been receiving for the last 2 or 3 meetings.
Okay, very good. So is there a motion?
Chavez moves.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Councilmember Baldwin. All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris,
Yes.
Chair Schnapp,
Yes.
Councilmember Kessley,
Yes.
Councilmember Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ontiveros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garola,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chavez,
Aye.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Let's move on then to item number 11, and this is an update from the county executive office staff. So go ahead, Clay.
All right. So this is going to be a relatively short one for me, not too many things to bring up. Did have one meeting with a TAC group, although that TAC has a report out that's going to come up in a later portion of the agenda. So we met with the other issues TAC on March 2nd, have not met with the other TACs this month. There was a presentation about the VCCEC that was made to the Saticoy Municipal Advisory Council. And if you recall, there's a vacancy for that community representative now. So we were very appreciative that Supervisor Lavier's office had us come to that and invited us to come speak. Other things coming up, there is a webinar series that staff from the Sustainability Division, myself included, as well as others, are helping organize that's going to be related to carbon sequestration, working lands, and offset projects. And so that's going to be announced sometime later this week. The first session in this 5-week series is going to occur on April 19th, and it'll be a weekly series. So if anyone is particularly interested, I will be sending that around to the council members, and then because things end up on our correspondence agenda, then the public will see that when it comes up too. But we're hoping to get a broad array of stakeholders, anyone from landowners to agencies to special districts to developers to land managers, growers, and those sorts of folks. So anyone that wants to know more about what those kinds of options are, we want to get that shared out. And then the last thing that I have is I just wanted to mention, and we have our agenda item that's for future items, but I do have in my notes a few things that our upcoming speakers or speaker opportunities. Public Works Agency has requested to make a presentation to this body during the April meeting that's going to be about sea level rise. There is interest, and this has been expressed by multiple members, in having the Tri-County Regional Energy Alliance come and talk about building related emissions. And they've said that they are happy to do so as the agenda allows. And then I've still tracking that there's interest in getting information or figuring out how to do even a site visit for the council for a public meeting, but that just gets logistically tricky with Gold Coast Transit District. So they've been very inviting and been happy to share information about what they're doing with respect to transportation with this body too. And that is it for my update.
Okay. Any questions for Clay? Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Kessley.
Clay and other council members, I don't know if this is the appropriate place for me to verbalize something of concern. I do have a concern about how we are functioning as a council and the use of the tax. And Clay is aware that I reached out because I was really, for me, education is key, and it helps me when I have access to information that others are looking at, that others are, the sources of the information that others are seeking. And without having access to that, it's very difficult for me to show up in a meeting and make recommendations on anything if the only thing I have to base that on is the criteria that the TAC committee that did the evaluation criteria came up with. I found out from Clay that I could not participate in any of the tax discussions or sit in, listen, or contact those members because it could create a daisy chain Brown Act violation. So my concern is this. As I said, education is key. And one of the things I've really learned over the course of the last couple of weeks is that the more educated I am, the better I am to be a part of this council. And it concerns me that there's so many opportunities out there that may be being left on the table because we're not, as a council, discussing what programs we should be adopting and getting input from all of us. And instead, we're siloing it into small little TACs that come up with what they think is important when maybe there are all kinds of other opportunities, such as the things that I've uncovered. It seems that we have way more impact if we start programs than we do if we're stopping something, especially if we don't have the infrastructure there to stop something. We can make way more impact with things that we start. And I have two examples very quickly. I've had the opportunity to tour the landfill, the waste management landfill now twice. And I have learned an incredible amount of what they are doing. And they have a program that we should be investigating and recommending to our Board of Supervisors because, as I found out yesterday, they already have the approval for $86 million in funding to create an infrastructure where they divert all landfill gas that is currently being flared into pipelines that is natural gas that will be a huge benefit to the community and to their business plan. They are stuck in the mud right now because the Air Quality Control District hasn't really been responsive, and it's been about a year now. And there's some terminology that needs to be tightened up for them to be able to push this through. And what I was told is just by this one thing, 100,000 tons a year of greenhouse gas can be avoided. That's significant, and that's something that is doable right now if we embrace it, we get behind them, and let waste management become a model. And so I bring that to our attention, and it's something we should be looking at because we know greenhouse gas emissions from landfills is one of the highest emissions out there. The other thing, as a property owner for buildings, I have 1 million square feet of roofs, and I'm looking at solar farming with batteries. I have the potential through my own roofs to create energy that goes into a microgrid and can help a whole community. And I'm going through the educational process to find out what that involves. There's so many things we can start that make much more of an impact than us trying to stop things that we're not ready to stop, and we could cause great harm to many people that are very disadvantaged. And I don't know where are the appropriate places to state that, but I wanted to put that out there.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Kessley. Any other comments or questions for Clay? All right, seeing none then, thank you for your report. And then let's go to item number 12, which is the request for Ventura County Climate Emergency Council to approve a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to create a climate change public education program. We've set aside 25 minutes for this presentation, and I know Councilmember Baldwin, we bumped you to this meeting, so we're looking forward to your presentation, so take it away.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. Well, we had the presentation once about what the program is. That was in January. I hope everybody paid attention to that, listened to it, those who weren't in attendance. But at the January meeting, some members brought up the fact that I hadn't gone through an analysis of the criteria. So it was continued, and Council Member Ferris agreed to work with me to help me do the evaluation, since he was on the evaluation criteria pack. And I did that, working with him and with Clay. Also, I didn't have numbers specific to the county, so Clay could help me get that in terms of, primarily in terms of salaries. So that was submitted to you for last month's meeting. So you had about 5 weeks to digest it, I suppose. I don't know what more to say about it other than to summarize that. And I just heard the word education a few minutes ago, that just to remind people that with a budget that's a tiny piece of what the county has, I put together for my 76 member organization at the Air Pollution Control District, a program that got worldwide recognition. And we did it with 2.5 people and down to 2 people. It can be done countywide to educate the people about climate change, which in my case is very similar to air pollution control, because really the emissions for most of the things, not all of the things, are very, very similar in terms of what individuals can do to control ozone. But most of the things controlling ozone apply to, I'd say virtually all of the things apply to ozone control, apply to climate change. It's easy to do. You just have to start off and get it in gear. It's really not that expensive. And one other thing, I sent out a little note, an email that the Los Angeles Unified School District, this was a surprise to me. I didn't know they were doing it, but I found out a few days ago, has adopted a resolution requiring climate change education in all of their schools. That school district's huge. I don't know, I vaguely recall it's like the second largest in the country or something like that. And they're our neighbors. And we're not in a position to tell the Ventura County school districts to do this too, but it would be nice. But the county itself can get up. And when at APCD, my 2 staff went, and 2.5 for a while, went into the schools to provide the specific education with the knowledge of the science, which most teachers don't have, although the science classes do. So I did the analysis thanks to a lot of help from Mr. Ferris and Clay. And now I'm just asking the council to, once again, after doing the analysis, to support this proposal to have the county create a public education and outreach program.
Okay, so
And Mick was going to say a few words about it.
If it's all right with Vice Chair Chavez, I'll just chime in a little bit for your question. So yeah, so I did have the opportunity to help Councilmember Baldwin with this, and I think the key is to understand whatever program we were proposing, however we're planning to make that recommendation to the board, the evaluation criteria is there to help us assess if it were implemented, how it would be effective, how effective do we think it would be, how much do we think it would cost, and do we think we run into additional hurdles, such as community backlash or whatever that might be. That's what I help in doing that, to do that. So for a public education campaign, the key would be, if it were to be implemented, how do we know it's effective? It would help make those programs that require public participation for them to be successful, be more successful. So we made some educated understandings of, here's the programs that we think that we need public's help with. here's how public education program would help make that more effective. Here's an estimate for how much we think that would cost, and it'd be roughly materials and salary for a couple people. And that is at least the overall sense of how effective we think it might be. Also, I think just in backlash, we didn't consider that there would be any overly community backlash with respect to additional education about participating in these programs to make them more effective. So that's just the background to help this council assess this program and see if it's worthwhile of recommending it to the board. So that's where that was what I tried to do with respect to Councilmember Baldwin's proposal.
Okay, thank you. Really appreciate your help with this proposal. So let's go to comments or questions. And I see Vice Chair Chavez with his hand up. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilmember Baldwin, I want to thank you for your work on this. At first, when I first saw this agenda item at our last meeting, I'm not going to lie, I thought Clay was the one that created the whole entire document and submitted it. It was done very nicely, very detailed, and I appreciate that. It was talked about education and how important it is in order to ensure that the education that we're distributing to the public is accurate and informative at the same time. And I believe you truly reach all the essence of what the criteria TAC had envisioned when trying to develop these plans and implement them, and how would they have their impacts. So, you know, after everyone's comments and after we hear from the public, I am ready to make a decision on this one. So thank you for your hard work on this. I know you and we sit on the transportation TAC, and that one has kind of taken a little backseat as you worked on this project, but I am very happy to see the work produced out of this. So great job. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Councilmember Baldwin.
Yeah, I've got to respond to something Daniel just said. He thought Clay had done it. Well, in a sense, Clay did it. I did all the substantive work, and believe me, Clay was a huge help on all of the formatting. I could not have done that on my own. He
So
came
thank
up
you,
with
Clay.
the data for me.
Yes, thanks, Clay.
So the idea and the substance was mine, but the art of it was his. I'll say that.
Well, then in that case, I'll chime in so that everything's clear. These ideas and the proposal and those sorts of things, those all came from Councilmember Baldwin with help and support and good analysis from Councilmember Ferris. And I would be happy to help any of the council members in a similar fashion. But at the same time, I want everyone, when they come up with proposals, develop them attack, it's yours to do if you want. So if you want me to keep my hands off of it, you're going to do it your way. I understand that and I respect that. But so my role was more in just making sure it was formatted so it was readable and so that people could really hear what Councilmember Baldwin had to say. So.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? So I see Councilmember Kessley and then Councilmember White.
Councilmember Baldwin, you did a fantastic job, and I do have to mirror everything that Daniel said. I think education is key, as I am really starting to find out. And also, I am now going to be one that's out there in the world educating others. And I think that's really how we get things moving forward. We have to educate people about the importance of managing things, of looking at our environment, seeing where we can make a difference, and getting other people to buy into it as opposed to fight and resistance. So I applaud you for a very well done proposal.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilmember White.
Yes, I want to applaud Dick and his proposal. I think it's fabulous what you've done here, Dick and Mick, to help with the evaluation criteria. On the other issues tab, a couple of the things we've been discussing, which we're going to talk about more later, involve choices that people make that can reduce their carbon footprints. for example, and Maggie pointed it out in her comments earlier about methane emissions from landfills. Obviously, getting organic waste out of landfills will reduce methane emissions considerably. So this is something that can be included in, and I think it already is in Councilmember Baldwin's program, something that an individual can do to be fastidious about keeping organic material out of the landfills. And another one that we're looking at is the emissions of carbon dioxide from buildings. And this is primarily reducing or eliminating the combustion of natural gas in buildings. And for new buildings, that's already being taken care of in the REACH code that should be coming forward soon from county staff to require all electric construction. But for existing buildings, existing residences, people have a choice whether they want to convert their appliances in their houses to all electric and eliminate natural gas combustion. So basically, I want to say that what Dick is proposing here really touches a lot of the bases that we're talking about. These are things that people can do to help the planet. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions for Councilmember Baldwin or this plan? Okay, let's go to then public comments. Do we have any public comments at this time for this item? We're on item number 12. So you could take yourself off of mute or raise your hand. All right, so seeing none. So let's see, we do have we have to take up our recommendation play.
Yes, if the council would like to, someone would need to make a motion to approve the basically someone would need to make a motion to approve the recommendation as presented.
I motion to approve.
This was second.
Okay. All right, so should we go with the roll call? Thanks.
All right, can do. Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Ferris,
Yes.
Chair Schnapp,
Yes.
Councilmember Kessley,
Yes.
Councilmember Ramirez,
Aye.
Councilmember Ontiveros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garola,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chavez,
Aye.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes,
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you again, Councilmember Baldwin and Councilmember Ferris for your help on this. All right, so let's go to item number 13. And this is a presentation from the California Geologic Energy Management Division, also called CalGEM, regarding methane emissions. And so we've set aside 25 minutes here. Thank you.
All right, and I will let the staff from CalGEM introduce themselves, but Michael is the first one I've made a co-host. Michael, can you tell me, I see Suman as well. Is there anyone else I should be making a co-host that might need to share or kind of want to show up at the top of the screen while we're in gallery, if you're in gallery view?
I think I'm the only one presenting today.
Okay. All right, the floor is yours.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike Vasconcelos. I'm with Department of Conservation, CalGEM. If you don't know what CalGEM does, we are the state oil and gas regulator. And part of our mandate is to protect public health. So I got what I hope is a very cool program presentation for you guys today. I'm going to share my screen and show you some stuff we're doing. Okay. So can anybody pipe up and let me know when they see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. All right. So this is about our aerial methane surveillance program. We have a UAS team. And just to be clear, UAS stands for Uncrewed Aerial System, which is just kind of a fancy term for a drone. All right. One more thing here. Okay. So why are we doing this? Well, primarily because methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. So it's under our purview to make sure that the oil and gas operators' facilities are operating in a leak-free condition. If we can minimize the amount of CO2 going into the atmosphere, we can hopefully minimize the impact of climate change. And another big important factor is public safety. In this picture in the lower left, there's a red arrow pointing to an oil and gas facility located within a very dense urban environment. There's businesses, multifamily apartment houses, all within a stone's throw of an operating oil and gas facility. So part of CalGEM's new mandate is public health, and this program is all about that. So what we've done is we've looked at all of the facilities that are in our district in the LA basin, and we've looked at other receptors like proximity to receptors, oil and gas facilities, production volume. We've even looked at cal and virus screen values, which takes into account environmental factors and where you live, and kind of give you a health screening. So we've come up with a list of about 300 sites that we feel are significant and that we want to assess the methane emissions from them. So right now we're flying about 4 to 5 sites a week. Unfortunately, that translates into about 2 years to fly all 300 sites. All right, so here's a picture of our drone. This is definitely not your local Walmart drone. This is a very specialized drone that carries a laser sensor that's tuned to the wavelength of methane, so we can analyze what methane is in the air. The drone also has a live camera. We have some other LiDAR landing sensors, so there's some automated capabilities. So what can the drone do? So this little laser sensor on the bottom can sense as low as 1 ppm, 1 part per million of methane in the air. We can fly for about 30 minutes. We fly typically at 30 meters. And we can program the drone to fly an automated flight pattern, so we don't have to fly it manually. So limitations, it only measures methane, as I said, because the laser is tuned for methane. And we're measuring methane in the air and not on the ground. So if we do measure methane over a certain facility, we can't say that the methane is from that facility. It could have blown there from somewhere else. So wind is a factor when we do these investigations. And when we do find elevated methane, which is anything above a background level, which is about 2 ppm of methane in the air, we always recommend a ground investigation, boots on the ground, to actually look at the components on the facility. So every time we fly a methane flight, we also fly another smaller drone and we take photos of the facility. It's called photogrammetry. And here's a picture of a facility down near the beach. You can see the boats. This is an orthomosaic, or a collection of 79 photos stitched together in a program. And we use these photos to, this is part of the presentation when we present the methane data, but this is also a snapshot documentation of the facility conditions at the time. So we can look back at the photos and see if if tanks have been added or deleted, or if they've made any changes to the facility that hasn't been permitted. So here's a picture. You can see this is a figure one of how we present our methane data to the operator, the oil and gas operator. When we fly a site and we get elevated methane, we create this figure, and the little dots, they don't represent discrete locations of methane, but they represent elevated methane in the air. So the operator gets a letter, and we essentially say, hey, we've flown your site, we've measured elevated methane over your site. We're asking you to perform an investigation and to look at all the components on your site and check them for leaks. We give them 2 weeks to do this. And when we send our letter out, we CC the local fire department, Air Quality Management District, and California Air Resources Board. So they're aware of our flights also. This is a bunch of numbers, but the red box, this is a bit of success with our program. In one example, we flew over a facility at 90 feet, and our drone measured 58 parts per million methane in the air. The operator went back with tools, and they looked at all the components, and they measured leaking components. They found several leaking components, and they measured 1,100 to 76,000 ppm. So this is a win for us. This shows that the technology does in fact can detect methane in the air, and in this event, the operator did search for leaks, and they found leaks, and they fixed them. So just some numbers. We began flying this drone, this methane drone, back in May. We've flown about 58 facilities. Of those 58, 6 only had background methane, and that's a really important metric. Not the number, but the fact that we've found facilities where there are no elevated methane. It lets us know that not every site is going to be have high methane concentrations. We've issued 42 letters requesting the operator to look into the leaks. And 12 operators have reported that leaks have been found and repaired. It seems like a small number, but each of those reports contains multiple leaks. Typically there's 2 or 3 or more leaks found after each investigation. And we have 2 operators that are not in compliance. That's not uncommon. We get a lot of pushback from operators. Okay, that's our program in a nutshell. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, are there any questions? And so we do have Councilmember Baldwin. I see your hand up. Go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. The drone's pretty neat. What I'm wondering is, have you used or you anticipate using it to look at oil fields in general, especially where abandoned fields, where one of the things we're trying to address today is how to properly cap abandoned wells. And the second part of my question is, if and when you find an abandoned well that's leaking, does your organization have the ability to somehow make the repairs happen, either hiring contractors to do it or ordering? I don't know who you would order since it's abandoned and the owners are gone. I don't know. I honestly don't know what to do there. But do you have the authority to, let's say, make it happen? It's just simple words. Make it happen. Make the leak get shut off.
Yeah, I'll answer your second question first. we do have the authority if we become aware of a well that is leaking, regardless of ownership. Right, there's several cases, but if there's an operator, an owner, a functional operator, we'll make the operator aware of that, and typically a functional operator will go ahead and fix the well. Most functional operators don't have a problem with that, spending money on that. If the site has been redeveloped for residential or commercial use, then the new operator is essentially the property owner. To redevelop a property, you have to take ownership of the wells. Then they become responsible for fixing the well. And if they refuse, CalGEM as a state entity can issue an administrative order, which is a legal requirement that they take action on the well. There's a third situation where the well is an orphan well, meaning that it's the operator is defunct, maybe from the past, they're out of business, gone. There's no ownership of the land. Well, I'm not sure about that, but there's no owner of the well. Land is undeveloped. In that case, sometimes the state of California will take over that well and will do an abandonment. Your first question about assessing oil fields in general, there's a lot of oil fields, and we could spend years and years and years with dozens of drones flying the fields. That's why it's not really practical, so that's why we have created that risk-based prioritization for facilities. But that said, if there are known issues of methane leaking in oil fields due to whatever, leaking wells, facilities, or even methane permeating through the ground from petroleum reservoirs, the drone would only be of value to confirm that there's leaking methane. It wouldn't tell you where it's coming from.
Is CalGEM somehow involved in using the data, monitoring the data, whatever that's now being developed and or will be developed from satellite monitoring of methane leaks?
I'm going to say just no. We don't have satellite data available to us. I know California Air Resources Board may be getting satellite data at some time in the future. We may be privy to that, but no. I know there are some websites where you can see global CO2, but it's such a high level measurement that it really doesn't affect how we operate.
Thank you.
Okay, I did see Councilmember Ontiveros, you had your hand up.
Yes, so thank you for the presentation, and thank you for attending our meeting. I heard you say the state of California, if there's an abandonment of an oil well, the state of California will take over. What does that entail? What does that mean? How does that work? And I just didn't understand. Do they take over the ownership of the property of the well, or how? I just have lots of questions about that little statement. Thank you.
Yeah, the situation where the state takes over the ownership of a well and the abandonment of it is very specialized. It only occurs when the well has been orphaned, which means that the company that drilled it and operated it and produced the oil are no longer functional. They're completely out of business. Our legal department searches records and we can't find any ownership of the well. So this is another group, but there's a group that determines which wells the state will abandon every year. We have a budget for that. But probably, I don't know, 95, 98% of the time, the abandonments fall to the current operator or some other owner entity, the developer, property owner sort of thing.
So it's a current property owner that is responsible for this type of well. Ultimately, is that fair to characterize it as such, or is that unfair?
No, that's fair. So an oil well is going to be either in an oil field,
Mhm.
well, it could be operating, it could be idle, or it could be abandoned. In LA, where we have a lot of work, many of these old wells are on what are now residential properties. They're either functioning or they're abandoned. So when those properties become developed, it's a requirement that the developer take ownership of the wells, and then they become ultimately liable for the wells and their safekeeping.
And I do have one last question, and thank you for answering these questions, but and you may not know the answer to this question, but when those abandoned oil wells are purchased by developers, do these go in the deeds? Is there a documentation in the deeds that this private property has this type of well on it? I wonder if people know that they're purchasing residential properties and people living there with this kind of issue directly related to their real property.
Yeah, that's a really good question because, oh, Sarah.
I can actually take that, Mike. So, hi, my name's Sarah Doe. I'm with Public Transparency with CalGIM. For any abandonment specific questions, this is kind of like out of the purview of our methane drone thing. But if you have additional questions and really want to get more into how the abandonment process works, including like transfer of ownership, orphan wells, anything like that, I'd be happy to give you our information and we can go way more into depth with you in regards to that.
I was just wondering in general, if people know that they live so close to these kinds of things and how it affects our health as human beings. And so I just, I'm just curious. And once I start thinking about that, I'm not an expert. I'm learning. I'm here, but I care about, our human health and how it's affecting our environment. And so, it's just one question leads to another, because I feel like once I find out how close they are to residential properties and the fact that people have purchased these properties and now they're responsible, and maybe people aren't even aware and don't even know. So I think it's important that this come out of the closet, so to speak, and we all are aware of what's going on. And these are decisions that were made generations ago, and now they're affecting us, and they're affecting our children and our grandchildren and henceforth. So I'm just asking questions to make light of this issue, because even though I'm on this council and even though I've been an environmentalist most of my life, I didn't know about this issue at all until I joined this council. So I'm truly appreciative of the work that you're doing and the fact that we're learning about this subject. So thank you very much.
100%. I just want to touch base on that a little bit more. So we definitely care so much about health, human safety. That's one of the main priorities and why CalGIM is in place to begin with. But if you want to learn more about that, I will definitely be able to get you to people that specialize with abandonment so you can get that information. Because the Methane Drone program is a totally different program from abandonments. So I just want to make sure that you're getting the information you want.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And so I see several hands up. So I see Vice Chair Chavez, you had your hand up, and then Council Member Garola, and then Council Member White. Kathleen, we'll get to you in public comments if that's okay. So go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quick, first, thank you for the presentation. I think it's great to hear about that. How often are the drones flown? Whether it's a number of time of days, the number of time during a single day and then during the weeks.
We will typically fly the drone 2 days a week. During one day, we can fly 3 or 4 sites. So we can do, maybe 6 to 8 sites each week.
Okay. And just to confirm, because I think people may be confused by this, but CalGEM, you're a state agency, correct? This is something through the state. This is not a nonprofit organization, correct?
That's correct. We're a state agency, absolutely.
Okay. Now, you may or may not have information. You made the comment that LA has a lot of work to address in regards to their wells. How does Ventura County compare to them?
You know, I can't speak to that. All my work is in Los Angeles Basin, so I don't know how many wells and how wells relate to you know, urban development in Ventura County.
Okay. There was some conversations in regards to orphan wells and the leaking. When the drones are flying over the orphan wells and it's determined that they are orphaned, the state takes a cost, correct?
They may. Just because a well is orphaned doesn't necessarily mean that the state is going to abandon it or action the well.
Okay, because an orphan well, I should say, and again, this may be under yours or might be under somebody else, but can an orphan well become active once again?
It's possible, yeah. If you know, if the well is in good shape, it's not damaged, somebody wants to purchase it, but that begs the whole question of who are they going to purchase it from, since it's an orphan well. But yeah, I'm not an orphan well expert, and I'll just suggest, you know, any very specific questions that I can't answer can be put in writing and forwarded to Sarah through Clay, and then
Okay.
we can answer them in writing.
All right, I appreciate that. And just a couple, how long has the drone program been around?
It's been around about 2.5 years. We started with photo drones, just taking, you know, pictures of sites to document them. But the methane portion has just been since May of last year.
Now, has the drone program met or exceed expectations for the program?
The drone program, the methane portion has exceeded expectations. We've, like I said in the presentation, we're surprised that so many leaks are being found in between, you know, AQMD and the Air Resources Board. They're the primary air regulators, and we're finding leaks that occur in between their usually 4-month, I think, their quarterly inspections. So I think it's been very successful.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate the presentation, and it's reassuring to know that new technology is being explored in order to try to help out with these leaks and to ensure that we are addressing them as a state. You know, California tends to be a leader when it comes to the environment. So to be able to introduce technology, because technology is such a big part of our world, I think it's a great step forward to address this real issue that we have. And hopefully in the future, we can maybe get CalGEM back and talk about orphan wells in a little bit more detail. But again, I do appreciate the presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good question. So then we have Councilmember Barola and Councilmember White.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for your presentation. Again, thoroughly enjoyed it and very informative. At the start of the presentation, you had mentioned that over a couple year period, you might be able to do a couple hundred locations. That's the question, I guess, has to do with budgeting. If your budget was increased, would you, for either staff or equipment, would you be able to produce more flights over a shorter period of time?
Yeah, the short answer is absolutely. And as we show more progress and success with this program, and we have meetings with folks like yourself, and the public becomes more aware of it, CalGEM sees how successful it is. They're gonna allow more funding. Absolutely. I think the program will grow probably first more in our other districts, Ventura, in our northern districts. Get the program started with them too, but. Yeah, if we had 2 of these drones, yeah, we could fly 300 sites a year. You know, and budget wise, this type of setup, just the hardware is about $90,000 for the drone and the sensor.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. So let's go on to Councilmember White, and then I did see Councilmember Kesley with her hand up. Oh, and Sarah, did you have anything that you wanted to add at this time with those comments?
I did. I just wanted to let everyone know that I have the email address that they can contact if they have any additional questions regarding like specific abandonment issues or orphan wells. We're really happy to get you guys to the experts to get you that information. Can I go ahead and provide that to everyone?
Yes, go ahead.
It's CalGEM, CALGEM, Public Transparency Office at conservation.ca.gov. So CalGEM, Public Transparency Office at conservation.ca.gov. And yes, I know it's a mouthful. I just wanted to get that out for you guys. If you do have additional questions, we'd love to get you guys to any experts you want to possibly speak or answer specific questions for you.
All right, thank you so much. So let's, yeah, so we have Councilmember White and then Councilmember Kesley.
Thank you. Yes, Michael and Sarah, thank you very much for coming. It's really heartening to know that our state government does have an agency like CalGEM that's working to help protect public health from the issue of oil wells and particularly oil well leaks. And I do have a couple of questions. I was excited when I first heard about the drone program. I think I read it in the LA Times some time ago. And when I read the article in the paper, it sounded like the drone was being used primarily in LA and Orange counties. Has the drone flown over Ventura County yet?
No, short answer is no. I'm with the Southern District, that's what we call our area, and we're primarily LA and Orange counties. I think we have a little tiny sliver that might pop into Ventura County. But no, we're kind of busy flying our own district right now. And like I said, this is a new program, and it hasn't been propagated to all the districts yet.
I think we would be very happy to have a methane drone flown over Ventura County. My second question has to do with the money that seems to be coming from the federal government and the state government for the proper capping of leaking oil wells. We've heard about $1 billion from the federal government, of which California in the first round is expected to get $61 million. And we understand in the governor's budget that there's included some $200 million for oil well capping. Both of these sources of funds recognize that methane is a powerful greenhouse gas. Thinking about what CalGEM has the capacity to do in coordinating plugging leaking wells. I understand from the AB 896 legislation that was passed last year, signed by the governor from our local assemblyman, Steve Bennett, increased CalGEM's budget to or the maximum that they could work with to $5 million a year for oil well capping from $1 million a year. If we're talking about an inflow of $261 million for oil well capping in California, is CalGEM positioned to coordinate that kind of expenditure?
Yeah, I'm
Hi,
gonna let
Councilmember
Sarah.
White. I can actually take that.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually are in the beginning planning stages for managing and mitigating the funds that will be coming in. In fact, we do have an upcoming meeting with several counties starting later this month. The coastal region, which includes Ventura County, will be held Wednesday, April 6th, where we're working with county members to discuss how the abandonment process is going to work with this funds, the program that we have in place for identifying and prioritizing any wells in those areas. We're working heavily with the counties to ensure that we are prioritizing the needs for each community. So this is definitely in the works. Stay tuned. It is in process. So hopefully that puts everybody's mind at ease a little bit.
That's really good to hear, Sarah. Thank you. I think that what our council is proposing here today in this resolution we have in the next agenda item is to kind of wave our arms and say, hey, look at Ventura County. We know we have a lot of oil drilling and oil well activities here. Our particular council is concerned with climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. If there's anything that can be directed to Ventura County, we're very interested. And so the resolution that's coming up is just intended to do that, is to wave our arms and say, please pay attention to the problem here in Ventura County. And the same thing goes with the drone program. We would sure like to have the equivalent of what's being done down south performed here in the county. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember White. We have Councilmember Kesley. Go right ahead.
Many of my questions have already been asked and answered, so thank you very much for that. My one question is, what is the difference between CARB and CalGEM? What is CalGEM doing that's different than what CARB is doing? And does CalGEM work with CARB? Because I see a lot of language already about what CARB is doing, you know, in leak detection and repair. And then what is CalGEM doing? Is that enhancing that?
Yeah, so CalGEM, California Geologic Energy Management, we're the oil and gas regulators. So just real quickly, we permit drilling of oil wells, we permit abandonment of the oil wells, we permit operation of injection wells, okay, and we inspect facilities. CARB, California Air Resources Board, you know, I can say that they're primarily an air regulator. CARB has their own regulations. We have our own regulations. I'm not an expert on CARB. I don't even know what their regs are, if they have thresholds for methane. For CalGEM, we require that the operators run their facility in a leak-free operation. So that's why we're able to cite them to fix things. And with this program, we typically don't work with CARB, but in this program, we are CCing CARB on all of our investigation letters so that they're aware of it. And they've been extremely responsive. We email an operator a letter one day saying go investigate. CARB shows up the next day with a surprise inspection. And so there's enforcement from all sides of the equation. So this is actually really a good example of government regulation working.
Excellent, excellent.
Hope that answers your question.
And it sounds like you have more of the leverage to affect repair than CARB does, and that's maybe where you come into play. CalGEM?
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I don't know what CARB's regs are.
Okay.
But we can attempt to shut an operator down if they don't comply, and I'm not sure what CARB can do.
So we do have a decent mechanism in place between CARB and CalGEM to really identify emissions and put some sort of and do something to take care of the problem.
Yeah, it's a brand new, very, very minimal connection.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. Yes, so we have Councilmember Ramirez. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks again for your presentation. Just piggybacking on what Ms. Kesley was talking about, that just identifying how we do have the systems in place in the state, and really appreciate listening to how there are the systems in place and how they need to grow, because one drone that is needing to go over the state of California, and we know that it's not going over Ventura County. So this is essentially the next agenda item, is to say, we appreciate that there's money out there, and we in Ventura County appreciate that we need to grow these programs, and we want these drones to be flying over us and this technology and these systems that are in place to grow. So that, I appreciate you identifying that, because that really is, there's so many wonderful things that are happening in the world. I mean, especially in a time when we're focused on what is not working, but there is so much genius that has come together in all of these different layers of, whether it's government or agencies or nonprofits or in people's homes, that are really growing solutions. So I want to really appreciate that the drone program is an aspect of a solution that is working to minimize, to identify where methane leaks are happening, so that we could then address it as a state, to address what's going on. But also understanding that one drone isn't going to cut it, and that needs to grow. And that's really essential, because when you're giving us these statistics, that methane has a 20 to 30 times higher global warming potential than CO2. That's where we need to be talking. This is the conversation we need to have. So I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate that our current administration has made more money available. It probably is still a drop in the bucket of what needs to happen, but it's still, we here in Ventura County, I know at least myself as a resident of Ventura County, would like to grow what you're already doing for the state. So thank you for the work you're doing in the world, and thank you to everybody who is listening, who is, I know the public comments will be rich with their own ideas about what's happening, but also, we're all doing our individual work, and it's important, all of it. So thank you for that presentation.
Thank you. And I think it's safe to say that CalGEM leadership is looking to expand this program to all of the districts, so that this is not just an isolated, Los Angeles basin kind of thing. It'll just take a little time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So let's go back to Councilmember Baldwin.
So with that last conversation about what CARB can do, I'd like to point out that air pollution control districts permit and regulate, inspect, enforce leaks at permitted wells and operating facilities and storage facilities. I can't say throughout California, but certainly throughout the San Joaquin Valley and down in our basin. in the LA basin. And then what happens is inspectors go out to inspect the oil fields. I know, like, my inspectors used to go out and they would call up a technician and say, meet me at such and such a gate. And they would call them in the morning and say, I'll see you there at 8:30 to let them in. And then they go out and do a surprise inspection with their leak detector. Now we're looking for reactive organic compounds, which is a component within the methane gas flow. Air pollution control districts cannot regulate methane because it doesn't form ozone. But closing a leak closes a leak. And so you guys need to know that, at least with active permitted facilities throughout the Southern California region, that these are being inspected. What's not being inspected is abandoned facilities, closed facilities that are leaking that doesn't have an active permit from the Air Pollution Control District. So there's some hope there, but it's not the solution at all. It's and for methane, it's just not. We need a lot more. We need to find a way to get to the closed things that are leaking that nobody seems to be responsible for, especially the abandoned ones. And so I'm hopeful that this money can flow our way and help. But it's not doomsday. I hear a little bit of doomsday from some of the members here, and there is active work on virtually every piece of petroleum product that's operating under a valid permit. They're being inspected.
Okay, thank you. So then we have Vice Chair Chavez. You have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask real quick because there was a little talks or touching on the next item, but in regards to the drone program, of course, this is something that we all want. We all want the drone program to be expanded. But from what I'm hearing is that the LA Orange County District, it's a test pilot to determine if it's going to be successful and if it can be duplicated elsewhere. So I'm curious in regards to if this money starts going into the counties, will the counties be able to turn around and give that money right back to CalGEM or to the state and say, hey, we want the same drone program? Is there the workforce available to even execute something like that? So just that is just that quick question is that even possible? Is that even realistic that if we receive this type of funding and turn around and give it back to the state and CalGEM in order to try to get a drone program here, is there a workforce at CalGEM to be able to carry that out?
Yeah, that's a complicated question. I can't answer it directly, but I will say that we at CalGEM want to take a bit of that money. We would like to take a bit of that money, and we'll petition for it to grow all of our programs, which means more staff, because we're all licensed pilots, so that takes training and money. More staff, more licensed staff, and more equipment. It's going to happen regardless, because I think this program has already reached the tipping point where leadership knows that it's successful. It obviously has a high visible profile, which is a very very positive thing, So I don't think the program is going to fall down and go to sleep. It's going to grow. As far as county gifting money to CalGEM, I couldn't even begin to talk about that.
And I appreciate that, and it's not so much of gifting, but just redirecting those funds. Because again, there's a lot of talks about funding, and I understand that a drone is $90,000 for a single drone. I'm almost thinking that maybe instead of passing a resolution, that we look in advocacy, petitioning our assembly members, our state senators on getting more funding to CalGEM and investing in these programs. But I don't want to go too much into the next item, so I'll end my comments there. And again, thank you for the presentation and the information. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, and so then we have Councilmember White.
I just wanted to respond to Dan's comment there about this money coming to the county. It's we tried to point out clearly in the documentation for the resolution and the evaluation criteria that the money is not going to come to the county. The money is going to be directed probably to CalJam. And what the resolution is suggesting is that in implementing the well capping program, that the request is made to be sure to pay attention to Ventura County. So there's not going to be a transfer to or from of this 261 million to Ventura County.
Okay, thank you. I do have a comment and a couple of questions. So Michael and Sarah, thank you for joining us today. It's a wealth of information that was not on our radar, but now it is. And we appreciate all the wonderful work that you're doing and continue to do. And hopefully we can accelerate all of that to then be implemented along with, you know, all the other programs that you do for Ventura County and our residents. With regards to your prioritization for where you're going to be doing this work, and you're basically in Los Angeles and Orange County, I mean, do you have a strategic plan that would, you know, carry forward into, you know, taking this concept and work into Ventura County in the next 1 to 2 years? Do you have a, you know, a scaling program that you're looking at for that? And then number 2 is that when you do evaluate and you find an operator that has some leaks going on and you notify them and they fix it, is there a return program within your process so that you can maybe reevaluate them within the next 6 months? Or is that typically what happens then in the follow-up?
Yeah, really good questions. Regarding growing the program, I know that our northern district is in the process of purchasing or requesting the funds to purchase a drone and to train people. This is probably going to be a cascade thing where the other districts' leaderships realize that this is important and they push the other districts to do it. There's not I don't think there's a strategic plan with dates, you know, to move forward, but it's going to happen. And within 2 years is a reasonable amount of time. The second question, can you recap that real quick for me?
Yeah, so when you do find an operator that has a leak and they fix it, do you have a follow-up program within your, you know, your process to get back to them in like 6 months to see if that's, you know, not an ongoing issue, not something reoccurring?
Yeah, we don't right now simply because of resources. We're still only a portion of the way through our initial list after 8 months. But in an ideal world, we absolutely send folks back. And, you know, I'd like to say that I'm relying on CARB or AQMD to do follow-up inspections, but honestly, I don't know what they're doing.
I like the fact that it's an integrated process and you have many more partners at the table to help that. Yeah, thanks. All right, so any other questions from council before I end up then going to public comments? Because I do want to get to Kathleen Wheeler. So I'm looking at our council. All right, no hands up. So Kathleen, go ahead. You have let's step into public comments and you have a couple of minutes, so go right ahead.
Thank you. I think that there's so much that's very promising about this program that Mr. Vasconcellos has described. My question and concern is about enforcement. When you juxtapose the big picture and the code red for humanity with the outsized power, money, and influence of the oil and gas industry, I'm concerned about and curious about how effective are these administrative orders. And if the operator is left to do their own investigation and repair, that concerns me. You said that there's enforcement from all sides with CARB and another organization, but you also said earlier that you get a lot of pushback from operators. So I guess that's my concern, more of a concern than a question is, and Chair Schnapp brought it up with the follow-up, and I think that's a big question to keep in front of mind. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And then I do see another hand up, Roseanne Witt. Go right ahead.
Hi, thank you. There are 2 points that I'd like to make. With regard to the data that the CalGEM representative showed with regard to the effectiveness of the drone program, I noticed that all of the examples cited were city gas line leaks, not oil well gas leaks. And when specifically asked about oil field assessments, he basically said that there are lots of oil wells across the state, and therefore surveying them currently is not practical because it would take years. And as Councilmember Baldwin said, abandoned wells are not currently being inspected even by a QMD. So I think that our oil wells are a problem, specifically our abandoned oil wells. And I would also point out as my second point that the statistic of methane being 20 to 30 times greater in terms of global warming potential than CO2 was quoted, that's over a 100-year time frame. And the IPCC has told us that we need to basically zero out emissions by 2050, which is 30 years from now. So a much more reasonable statistic to use would be the 20-year framework, which puts the global warming potential of methane at closer to 80 times of carbon dioxide. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from the public? Right, Michael, one other question. When was CalGEM created?
I'll do the easy one first. CalGEM is a recent name change. Formerly, it was Division of Oil, Gas, and Geothermal Resources, or DOGGR. I'm sure you might have heard that. DOGGR was created back in 1915, a long time ago. Given that, even though 1915 was a long time ago, California's had wells since the late 1800s. So there are a lot of wells that are out there even in Ventura County, I'm sure, that CalGEM, DOGGR doesn't have records for. And we run across that in Los Angeles all the time.
Okay, thank you.
You know, some of the public questions, very complicated. Can we get those in writing and respond, or how would you prefer that?
Well, let's see. Let me toss that question out to Clay. What would you recommend?
I would be happy to send that over to you written, and then I have the emails for both Kathleen Wheeler and for Roseanne Witt available from our interested parties list. And what I can do I can then, if staff is CC'd on whatever the response is and whatever we're included in, we can add it to the correspondence agenda so that gets shared with the Climate Emergency Council that way. Would that work for everybody? That way there's not too many cooks in the kitchen, but I can certainly connect CalGEM staff with the people that ask those questions.
That would be wonderful, and it will allow us to actually get people to the actual experts that handle each individual thing. I do want to speak though about those meetings that we are having regarding any abandonments, and I know that there was some concern over like how many wells are out there. Well, part of the purpose of these meetings is so that we can work with the different counties, different local jurisdictions to identify those and bring those to attention so that we can ensure that proper plugging and abandonment is occurring. So this is kind of a partnership that we're doing, and anybody that is with the county that would like to be a part of those or may know of some wells that should be identified, we definitely welcome that. So we have the same goals you guys do. We definitely want to get the proper wells that need to be cleaned up and abandoned taken care of just as much as everybody else. We don't want there to be any human impacts if possible.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Any other questions? I thought maybe I saw Councilmember Florencia Ramirez hand.
You know, I really appreciated the comments from the public. Like I said, there's just so many people doing incredible work around this county, and I'm just humbled to be in this position to listen to the different people and the solutions that they're after. But I do want to say that I was very curious to hear from either from Michael, or was it Susan as well, about what your thoughts were in terms of that other. So because I had quoted the methane has a 20 to 30 times higher global warming potential. And we heard from, I think it was from Roseanne Witt, who had suggested that we should be looking at a different metric, which was that methane is 80 times higher if we look at it within a collapsed, the 2050 time period instead of 100 years. So I think for a lot of us who don't have that statistical background, I think it would be helpful to hear what your thoughts were on that.
Suman, you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Mike. I would rather go back and review some literature before we respond back to that comment. Let's do that because, again, some of the information we are quoting is from different public agencies like NOAA, US EPA. I wanted to consult those articles back before we respond on a long-term global warming potential for methane, please.
I can chime in though. There was some discussion of that with last month's meeting with CARB staff. And so if anyone wanted to have a look, I know that was discussed to some extent or another. I don't think they were dived into it too deep during their presentation. So it's somewhere in there. And I also wanted to call out that we have 2 agenda items left, both the recommendation from the other issues TAC, as well as the future agenda items. We're at 1:30 and we have at least one member who's got a hard stop at 2 o'clock. So I just wanted to call that to attention.
Yeah, so if anyone else has any more comments, if you could make them pretty tight so we can move on with this. I did see Councilmember White. You have a hand up again. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. On this issue of the global warming potential of methane, yes, many of us who are working on climate change, and that should include all of us, are looking to the global warming potential of 80 over a 20-year lifetime, because the goals in the state and the nation are closer to 20 years than they are to 100 years. Methane in the atmosphere degrades. It gets eaten up, among other things, by bacteria. But in the short range, it's a very powerful greenhouse gas. And so in Ojai, we're all talking about 80 rather than 20.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments from the council, public? All right, with that then, thank you, Michael, Sarah, and Suman. Thank you for joining us today. And we'll follow up with you through Clay with some of those comments coming back from you all for what was mentioned, whether it was to our council members and or the public. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
All right, so with that, then let's go ahead and go to item number 14. So this was a request for the Climate Emergencies Council to approve a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for a resolution supporting efforts to cap methane leaks from oil and gas wells and pipelines. We have reserved 25 minutes, but I think we're looking at a time certain of closing at 2 o'clock. So go ahead then. Is that you, Councilmember White, presenting?
Yes, I can take that. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll try to be quick. I know we've already talked about this at our last meeting. dealing with methane from the oil and gas industry is considered by climate regulators to be low-hanging fruit that can be done easily. And capping leaking oil wells is one of those things that can be done. As Dick Baldwin points out, APCDs are not empowered to regulate methane themselves, other than indirectly. And we heard from the Air Resources Board at our last meeting that they also are not empowered to deal with methane leaks from oil and gas wells. And the responsible agency is CalGEM. I'm so happy that we were able to get CalGEM to come to our meeting and present what they're doing. I think it's clear from listening to them that they would like to see an expansion of what they're doing. Drones is part of it, but oil well capping is another. In the packet, and maybe Clay, you could put up on the screen the map that's at the end of our presentation. Ventura County is one of the largest oil producing counties in California. And in 2018, CalGEM hired an organization called California Council on Science and Technology, which is a nonprofit scientific organization to look at the issue of orphan wells in California. And Clay made this, I had never seen this report before, but it's shocking. And I would urge all of you to take the time to read it. I think Clay's made the link available to all of us. If not, it would be good for him to do so. But take a look. This is a map that's included in that report that talks about orphan wells in California. And the map shows, quote unquote, likely orphan wells and wells at high risk of becoming orphan wells. And an orphan well is one that has no known owner or operator to lean on to properly cap any leaks. And if you look at, I don't know if you can scroll, yeah, there you go. The light colored dots are likely orphan wells and wells at high risk of becoming orphan wells. And that includes in the report idle wells. The report says clearly that many of the idle wells in California are likely to become orphan wells because they're either not productive or they will be acquired by oil companies that have less financial resources to do the right things on solving their environmental problems. But this map tells me that CalGEM's own consultant concluded that our own county, Ventura County, has lots of likely orphan wells and at risk of becoming orphan wells. We've heard that both the state and federal government is allocating money, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars for capping leaks in oil wells. And that tells me that they've concluded that, hey, this is a problem that we need to deal with, and we need to put some money towards it. And as I pointed out in comments and questions to the CalGEM people, that we're not asking in the resolution that this hundreds of millions of dollars be sent directly to Ventura County, but rather that a portion of it be used for the problems within Ventura County. We think this is an easy thing for our council to approve, for the Planning Commission to approve, and for the Board of Supervisors to approve. It is waving our arms saying, hey, look at Ventura County. If you're gonna plug oil wells with this money, why don't you do some here? If you're gonna buy drones to seek out those leaking wells, why don't you do it in Ventura County? I'm a firm believer in the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and that's really what we're trying to do. Just as Dick Baldwin talked about in presenting his wonderful education program, we on our committee work with Mick Ferris, who with Maggie put together the evaluation criteria. And Mick at the last meeting raised some good questions, and which required some deep dive into some of the data of like this orphan well study and some of the US EPA emission factors for idle wells and abandoned wells. So Mick, thank you very much for your contribution to make this a better package. And I hope you've all had a chance to read it. We think this is the responsible thing to do, and an easy vote for our council to move it on to the board and to put some attention to the real problem of methane leaks from the oil and gas industry. So I urge everybody to vote to approve this resolution, and I would take that further and make a motion that that the Climate Emergency Council approve the language in this resolution and pass it on to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors.
I second the motion.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Yes, sorry about that. I was on mute. Yes, so point of order then, go ahead.
Yes, Madam Chair, this is the same thing that was done at our last meeting, putting a motion before any council members had an opportunity to discuss the item. So I believe it's really inappropriate of Councilmember White to do this for a second meeting in a row, for a second to go on the table. Now we have a motion and a second, but there was no opportunity for the council members to even have a discussion on this. So Clay, what are our rules for dealing with something like this?
The rules are the same as the ones that were shared with you, that it comes right out of the administrative manual. There's a certain number of actions you can take when an item's on the floor. One moment, Councilmember White. And but at the same time, that motion is on the floor, but the council is at liberty to continue discussing before any kind of a roll vote is taken.
Okay, so I had a couple of questions for Councilmember White. Councilmember White, can you just clarify which is the largest producing county in California?
I couldn't tell you.
You referenced Ventura County. Well,
as one of the.
Of one of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kern County probably far and away. If you look at the map on the screen, you'll see.
Let me put that back up. Sorry about that.
So through my research,
and
the
to
largest.
Reply to your desire to.
I'm gonna reclaim my time.
Certainly, you.
I'm gonna reclaim my time.
Every opportunity to discuss.
Councilman White, I'm gonna reclaim my time. Thank you.
Yeah, Vice Chair Chavez has the floor right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Through my research, it shows that Kern County is the largest producing, and actually the third largest in the state of in the United States currently right now, followed by San Joaquin Valley, and then followed by the Los Angeles Basin.
Ventura County doesn't even come close to those 3 areas, but I guess we'll take your word on that. I'm curious in regards to what you're referring to capping. As we already know, there are different levels on capping. So I'm curious, what is the definition of capping? What does the others TAC refer to as capping?
I think I would refer that to CalGEM, what they consider to be a properly capped wells. We heard from Seafrog at our previous meeting about some of the capping efforts that have been done in Ventura County, where the capping was done with paper and rags and rocks and dirt. Certainly, it's got to be more than that. And
okay, thank you.
Referred it to CalGEM for the specifics. And I think we're not suggesting how to do this, Dan. We're suggesting that money available should go to CalGEM to do a proper job, whatever they think is proper.
All right, thank you. I'll just give a couple of comments. One, and I think for the most part, I've been really biting my tongue on this issue. And I think it's time that I actually speak on this because this is very frustrating. As a father of a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, air quality and environment are extremely important to me, extremely. And when we have council members on this council that say, if you do not side with me, you don't care about the environment or you don't care about people's health, I think is absolutely disgusting. All right. I understand and I have seen firsthand disadvantaged communities, and they just don't pop out of nowhere. Disadvantaged communities happen because of poor policies that are pushed on communities. All right, so let me just go ahead and put that out there. Because again, there are multiple council members on this council that like to make it seem that I, a Hispanic male, born in South Oxnard, continue to live in South Oxnard, a minority, doesn't care about my people. It's disgusting. I find it disgusting that we are talking about a capping process, and I appreciate Seafrog talking about what used to happen previously, but when asked the question, what is the definition of a term that is used in a resolution of capping? Well, I don't know. Refer to CalGEM. What is CalGEM doing? It's your resolution. You should be able to know these specific terms and what you plan on doing about those. I agree that we need to be able to take steps that are protecting our communities across the entire board. But I will not continue to just stand by, remain silent, and allow ridiculous attacks and to allow ridiculous policies that go to hurt our communities. Because the reality is, I live in those disadvantaged communities. I grew up in those disadvantaged communities. I don't have 2 homes. I have 1 home. All right. Understand that a resolution needs to have a substance, needs to be clear, needs to be able to benefit the majority of people, not just a small group or a small interest group, but the majority of people. There are still too many variables in regards to this resolution and just saying, well, let's throw our hands up so that we can get some money. That's why we reach out to our state representatives. That's why we reach out to our board of supervisors. Our state representatives, Assembly Member Steve Bennett now represents a good chunk of Ventura County. These are the steps that we need to be taking in order to push these types of policies. What it sounds like we can all agree that CalGEM needs more money in order to have these drones, in order to promote their programs and expand them. But I don't believe this is the right approach. And I'm getting sick and tired of hearing these ridiculous attacks that if we don't side with certain council members, we're against everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So are there any other questions from any of the other council members or comments? So I see Councilmember Kessler, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Daniel, for speaking so openly. I appreciate that. I do also want to highlight the capping terminology only because if we are going to make resolutions to pass along to our Board of Supervisors, we may want to make sure and ensure that we're using accurate references to exactly what that means based on what the different agencies actually use. It just seems that capping seems to be this general assumption that every oil well is going to get a plug put in it. And I don't know if that actually applies across the board. Under criteria to be degree of influence, it's rated medium, but I have to ask, does the county really have full authority to determine the implementation of this proposal? I don't know if they do. And I have to agree and speak to something that Daniel Chavez said, because it was what I said earlier in previous comments. I would love to see this council actually adopt policy changes that we can implement that benefit all. I've learned a lot, and I think there's a lot for us that this council can bring as an entire council and not just individual people, 2 or 3 getting together. Let's get together. Let's talk about what is important, what programs are out there that we can actually benefit so many people without doing further damage to the people that are disadvantaged, because those are the people that are being impacted terribly. And I happen to know many personally who have to make a choice between paying for gas or putting food on their table. And that's not right when there's many things we can do, we can start that actually has much more of an impact in lowering greenhouse gas emissions than just focusing on what we don't even have the infrastructure to implement. And we certainly can't ask the disadvantaged community to go out and purchase EVs. So I do appreciate the honest comments this morning, and I'm glad we're able to do this in this forum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Kessler. So I see Councilmember Garola and then Councilmember Ferris.
So just want to comment on probably the process. You know, we're trying to produce a public document. We want to be as thorough as we can. I really want to thank Mick for the time you spent working on the document with Dick. I think it's definitely was a lot of good information that needed to be thought of and included. So again, I appreciate that work, Mick. And then, you know, hearing from CalGEM just a little while ago, you know, I was just thinking of a few more things that we might want to consider for the document. So again, from my perspective, whatever document we produce, and I am in favor of you know, ensuring that we try to reduce as much methane gas leaks as we can. Definitely in favor of that, and I think we have the ability to produce a document that won't be shredded from other from all perspectives. I think we have a great start here, and I think we need to follow up on it. And again, it's just from my perspective, we just need to make sure we dot all the I's and cross all the T's when we present this. And I think it's in the works. I think we'll get there. And I feel very positive about continuing with the process on the document. So as it is right now, I think we still need to maybe look at a few more things in inclusion and or you know, just ensuring that we can pass the sniff test by everybody who's going to be looking at it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have Councilmember Ferris and then Councilmember Baldwin.
Thanks. And also I wanted to just clarify what Clay is referencing me as being the one that has the absolute hard stop. So I did want to provide some comments on it. So from the last meeting, the reason why I was in favor of tabling this motion was primarily two reasons. One is I felt the resolution was, I think, very well characterized by Councilmember White as a let's wave our hands and ask for money because we think it's important to do it. And I thought it needed to be more substantive than that. And for that, and also that we need to have a sense of the money that could be available, that the county could say, please focus on Ventura County. What information can we provide? Do we know that it could be effective? And in that spirit, I helped to try to work with the team to say, okay, how much money is available? Turns out it's not, some of it isn't even yet available. It's just something to where the county needs to be prepared to say, we're in favor of coming this way. Please use it for this particular program to reduce emissions in this particular area for which the funding is available. Here's how much it would go for on average. It's a wide spread. It could be really cheap. It could be really expensive per well, but you'd have a sense of how far it could go. And if the county took action, and this is the second part of it, is that the resolution should have some manner of action that the council actually takes. It can't be just waving your hand and saying, I think we should ask for money. It should be, what are we going to do to help support that effort? And if the county directs staff to prioritize through whatever open source resource is available to say, these are the most important, most impactful wells that the money could go for, we're supportive of that. We're going to dedicate resources to help those agencies, state and federal, to focus on them. That is at least the action we could recommend taking. It's not a program that the county would implement. And because of that, I can be in favor of sending that message, one that is at least action oriented and backed by at least some understanding of how it would be effective. That said, I really am disappointed with the discussion that we are having on this right now. I do think that we need to have more formalized ways of getting the recommendations to do the research and bring it back to the council. We should not be having some sort of sense that if you're not in favor of the proposal or supportive of more research, that we're against the aspects of addressing climate change. But I also do not appreciate the comments that have been brought to this thing that for some reason we can't have a rational discussion about the best way to bring these recommendations to have action by the board. We want to have frank comments. I'm having the frank comments right now. I'm not happy with how this has come to bear. I'm trying to make sure that we're objective in supporting these things. So my hope is that this will be the last time that we have such a sort of conversation. Thanks.
All right, so then I see Councilmember Baldwin. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm not the wordsmith, so I'm not going to try to rewrite or say what's right in the resolution. What I will say is that the thought of the resolution is to encourage the Board of Supervisors to encourage the state to send money this way to work on capped wells. What is a capped well? Well, basically it's a well that's been adequately sealed with concrete or whatever, not newspapers, typically concrete, to close it so that it does not leak. Do we need to put that, find the definition from CalGEM and put it in the resolution? I don't know. Most people around this county that work around oil know that when it's capped, it means it's sealed. How you want to word it, I don't know. But what I can tell you from my, 30 plus years of experience working around regulating the oil industry and the petroleum industry from different perspectives, all the way from the oil field to the refinery, is that the only way an abandoned well is going to get fixed is with someone else's money. It's going to be tax money, put fees on fuel. It's being developed right now, whatever. That we ought to be encouraging the state to look this way, to send money this way, to cap in whatever way you want to define cap. to get those leaks stopped. And again, I'm not a wordsmith. From my perspective, seems to read okay, but I understand the oil industry and their language, so I'm kind of comfortable with it. Other people may not be, but I can tell you that unless state or federal money comes into this area to deal with abandoned wells, then they're going to leak forever. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from council at this time? Because we do have a motion on the floor, and anyone else? All right. So Clay, can I ask your question here is that we haven't gotten to public comments if there was anyone else that wanted to make a public comment, because we already have this motion on the floor.
Typically, before an action is taken, we would need to hear public comment.
Yeah, okay, all right. So we open it up for anyone else from the public who might have a comment. I know that we have received a few correspondence from the public already on this. And so if there's anyone else that would like to speak at this time, you can go ahead and raise your hand and or take yourself off of mute. So I'm scanning the second screen, and then the first screen. I don't see anyone else from the public.
I see one hand raised.
Oh, yes, okay. John Brooks, yeah, go ahead. You have a few minutes.
Yeah, I don't want to poison the water, but I can't believe the minutia that this council is discussing on a totally non-controversial motion by Council Member White. It's if you read the letters from the public that says to this council, you got to take some actions. You got to pass things. You can't debate them for hours and then just put it in the trash can. Come on, do your job. And I must have missed the meeting. I didn't hear anyone insult Vice Chair Chavez at any point, or even suggest that he couldn't make his motion or dislike it. So I don't know where all this garbage comes out, but please just take a vote on it now and pass it to the Board of Supervisors. There's money that's going to be available. Capping a well is a clearly understood phrase that the member Baldwin and I certainly know. And I'm sorry to have an attitude about this thing, but from what I've been told, in a year's time, you haven't made any recommendations to the board. What are you waiting for? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, unfortunately, I must leave the meeting. So I wish the council well on the finalization of the motion, but I have to leave.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
I also too have a hard stop at 2 o'clock, so I'm going to have to leave the meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Councilmember Ferris and Councilmember Kessley. Any others from the public who would like to speak? All right, seeing none then, we have a motion that has been made by Councilmember White and a second. And go ahead, Clay, with the roll call.
Okay. Councilmember White.
Aye.
Chair Schnapp.
No.
Councilmember Ramirez.
Aye.
Councilmember Ontiveros.
Yes.
Councilmember Garola.
No.
Councilmember Chavez.
No.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-3.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then let's go on to, where are we on item number 15? And that's for council member comments and future agenda items. If we can wrap up in a few minutes, that would be great. So we do have updates from the tax, item number 15A. Anybody wish to go?
So Councilmember White had shared with me a document that I'm happy to put on screen share if that's what you'd like, Councilmember White.
Yes, please.
Okay. And
And I'll be very quick. These are items that the other issues TAC has been talking about that we intend at some point to bring forward to the full council. Item number 1 is capping oil wells. That was what we did today. Item number 2 is a program addressing CO2 emissions from existing buildings. The third one is methane emissions from landfills. The fourth one is moving towards electrification of county-owned buildings and other facilities, especially at the time of equipment replacement, to reduce natural gas use and CO2 emissions. Fifth, board policy supporting the use of low carbon building materials, recognizing embodied carbon in buildings. And item 6, a declaration of a climate emergency here in the county. So just wanted to throw those out there, things that we've been talking about.
Okay, thank you. Any other reports from other TACs? All right. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so from the ag TAC, we're a little slow getting started. What I'd like to do, and Clay, maybe you can help me out here. Was there, I think, 1 or 2 other committee members that were still looking for a second home? And if so, I'd like to, encourage them to join the ag TAC.
Both of those council members, unfortunately, were the 2 that had to leave early. So neither of those 2 are here.
Yeah, we lost one of those. Yeah.
Although we can, if the council would like, I can just generally, I can send that correspondence from kind of on behalf of you or however you would like to handle that, and let that be known. And if we would like for a future agenda item, depending on correspondence or however it kind of makes sense to move forward, we can invite them. I know there was some discussion of that nature in the others issues TAC at the last meeting too. Right now we have 3 TACs. There are 2 members as part of the ag TAC. There are 2 members as part of the transportation TAC. There are 3 members as part of the other issues TAC. The rule is that you can't have any more than a quorum on a single, or basically you can't have 50% of your council on a single one. So for example, the other issues TAC could have up to 1 more member. The ag TAC or the transportation TAC could have up to 2 more members. And in the bylaws, each council member can only serve on 1 TAC at a time. And this, per this council's request, this opportunity to report out on TAC updates and issues and things like that, that's going to be a standing item that I'll make sure to include in the agenda each month. So.
Okay, I would then encourage all the other council members then to, if you have any information in the agricultural field, if you could forward those to us through Clay, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
So I'll reach out to you too, because I do have a tremendous amount of information regarding agriculture.
Great.
Well, I could talk maybe about moving over to your TAC for a while, if that's, I think there should be cross-pollination happening as well, for sure.
I think there's an opportunity for that, but you'd have to leave the other TAC.
No, absolutely. So we'll have the discussion, but I appreciate you asking the other members.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other reports? All right. A staff update on future agenda items. So that's item number 15B.
Okay. Future agenda items. Those were some of the things that I shared at the last, during my staff update. So one of the things I wanted to see if this group, we have a kind of the first request for an agency to make a presentation to the group. The Public Works Agency wants to come and speak to this group about sea level rise. They see a connection in their work, and I don't have details on what that work is exactly, on GHG mitigation and climate adaptation activities associated with sea level rise. And so I wanted to put that on your radar, that that's a request that they've made that's outside of the other areas of interest that this group has expressed. But I also know the other issues TAC is particularly interested in issues related to existing building emissions. So we appear to have time on the agenda if we wanted to next week to include both of those items. or those topical areas if there is an interest to do so.
I think that's appropriate. Yeah,
Yes, I'm interested.
yeah, thank you.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Excellent.
All right, public comments. Any public comments here for the this item number 15? You can take yourself off of mute or raise your hand. All right, seeing none, I know it looks like a few more people have dropped off this call. 15D, council member comments, updates, and discussion.
You know, I just want to, I read the comments that we got from the public and from a lot of young people, and they were urging us to go to the IPCC. And so I did. It's been a while since I've gone back to revisit it, and it really is something I suggest for each of us just to do, I know that all of us have done that, but just to go back every once in a while for sure, and just be re-immersed in that collective just knowledge base. But there was one piece that I found that I really resonate with, and I just want to share with our committee because of the work that we're doing. And it said, climate resilient development isn't achieved with a single decision, action, or actions. It's the result of all the choices we make about climate risk reduction emissions, reduction and sustainable development on a daily basis. So the work we're doing, you know, it's a collection, right? I like to talk about how there's power in the collective and all of those little actions that lead up to change. So I applaud the work that we're doing on this, and I know we're going to have a lot more resolutions, a lot more happening now that we've gotten a system in place to move things forward. So I applaud all of you for the work you're doing, and adelante.
All right, thank you. And then I have Councilmember Garola. Go ahead.
Excuse me, I have to leave.
Do you have a comment before you leave? You can take.
No, I just have to leave. I have to go to work. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Councilmember Garola.
I too want to thank all the public for sending in their comments. I definitely appreciate that. And I definitely want to make sure that we do represent all of our constituents. I think that is vital in all that we do at all aspects of government. So I'm trying to encourage more participation from the area that I serve. But again, I do appreciate all the comment cards that came in. So thank you. We need that information.
Great, thank you. I do have a comment here is that, yeah, I did what Councilmember Ramirez and Councilmember Garola have said is that I really do appreciate the interest of the public and the weighing in on these items that we were taking a look at today. And I would encourage more as we move along in this process. One other thing that I do want to mention is that Clay and I have talked about the calendar aspect of what we have, because we need to go to the Board of Supervisors no later than time certain on this year's calendar on 2022. And so as we back up that information and now know that we have 2 items that are going to the Board of Supervisors, we had talked about the recommendation of having those items not be sporadic and just go to the Planning Commission and the board at different times, but maybe group them all together. And so we're looking at a time frame of, say, August, that we would get in front of planning, and then we would move those items onto the Board of Supervisors. Comment, I just wanted to share that so that you know that we do have some things that we need to get done. And we need to make sure that we have that time frame in place. So yes, go ahead, Councilmember White.
Well, I'm just a little concerned by what you just said, waiting till August before we present things to the board. We shouldn't wait. Today, for the first time, the council has adopted 2 actions that are important, and they need to get to the board as quickly as possible. We don't need to package them all up together. The board is used to looking at things every meeting, They don't wait till the end of the year.
One of the things I would like to chime in from a logistics standpoint and staff limitations, if we expect to have a proposal that's going to be voted on next month, just a month from now, then I would like to hold off going to the Planning Commission until we have that additional proposal. So if that's something that we expect to have on the agenda, that's fine. If it's not going to be in the next month or two, then I can go ahead and start proceeding to the Planning Commission. But I don't want to leave something out. And the other concern that I expressed to Chair Schnapp was that the terms for this council ends, which means we could have turnover. And so I want to make sure that things that happen with this group in these terms gets to that body before our October meeting, because that's where I expect changes to occur. The annual election based on the bylaws, I believe, and the start of the new terms is in November. So that's some of the timing. My concern is not delaying, well, it's a concern. I don't want to delay things on getting to the board, but I also don't want to leave things out. So if there's something pending that we expect, and I know the other issues is TAC is working on things, that's what I really don't want to miss.
I would say that it would be a mistake to delay getting it to the Planning Commission. The next step, the well capping is a good example of an opportunity that exists. We heard the CalGEM person talk about already starting to have meetings with counties on prioritizing spending that money. We don't want to delay this. My experience with this council is it's tough to get anything approved, and I don't have any great confidence that these next items are going to get approved at the next meeting. So I think we need to send them on right away and get them before the Planning Commission at their next meeting.
All right, thank you. And so I do really have a hard stop now. So we, if there aren't any other comments from the council member or discussion, we do have a hand up, it looks like, from public. Roseanne, if you could make this short, go right ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I just wanted to concur with Councilmember White. You are a climate emergency council, and this issue is urgent. So I would please plead with you to pass your resolutions on to the Board of Supervisors as quickly as possible. And second, I just wanted to point out with regard to the IPCC report that you've all been asked to read, it's not a matter of rereading it. It would be easy to understand why you're not familiar with the fact that the IPCC just came out with a new installment of their report on February 28th, which was 2 weeks ago, with regard to impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability. That report came out the same week that Ukraine was invaded, so it was not covered substantially in the news, but there is a new IPCC report, which is quite devastating, and I urge all of you to read it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so with that, then let's go ahead and adjourn. And our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks. Thank you, Clay.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.